this is Kerb, and I bring you another standard match. Today we're going to be rounding up Blangdmire week with just a Blangdmire matchup. This time not piloted by, our typical former Draggio enthusiasts, but this time we are going to be seeing it piloted by someone else, and they're going to be going up against a very old deck at this point. Kind of weird to be saying that, but Youthberk over on the right there. Of course, we do see Youthberk starting things off, going to be starting off with a really good discard there, discarding the Carino, and be putting that Zest out of the deck, adding it to the hand, and then of course that is going to force us to put a card from our hand into the soul, which of course is just going to be that Zest, so that's 1 out of 3 already set up. Youthberk really hasn't really changed that much, I would say, since a lot of new support isn't really used by Youthberk. Like the deck kind of just needs to play all of its pieces and just does its thing, which is still decently strong. I think it's like not as strong as it was obviously in set 13, but it still can sometimes steal some wins just by high rolling every now and again. So passing over to Blag, just gonna be swinging, passing, getting into defensive there. Of course, not gonna be mattering for anything because there aren't any other rear guards. I don't know what else you want me to say, but discarding a second Carino here to ride into the grade 2 youth there. I think honestly what we should do here is we're probably just going to search off the Carino, and then we're going to activate the grade 1 youth skill. But looks like we are actually going to be doing it in the reverse order, which is a little questionable, I would say. Like half the time it's not going to matter, but you kind of you'd always want to deck thin before you do like any searching and calling. Looks like it doesn't really matter because we're going to end up getting a Vergosa off the top 3 there. So now we've got 2 skills that can be activated. We've got the Carino that can be activated, and we can also activate the Carino right here. We'll be using the skill of the what's it called? The Carino, just to add that. So we're adding Gust to our hand here. And then from there, looks like we're going to have to put something into Soul. So it looks like before we finish resolving, Carino, we're going to actually use Vergosa here to put the Tempest from the deck into the Soul. Technically, things are out of order, but it doesn't really matter. Once again, this is locals. You're getting all 3 in the Soul anyway, so does it matter if we do things the right way? Maybe a little bit, but not sure what we Soul Blasted out for that Carino. I think it was the grade 1. No, did we Soul Blast at all? I might be crazy, but Vergosa does actually cost a Soul Blast. You in the comments can go back and look and see if the Vergosa Soul Blast or what was just like a very small cheat there. But there's always the typical case where I probably was not paying attention. But maybe that's a reason why it's good to do things in the correct order. Discarding, was that a I don't know what we discarded there, but checking top 3, we are going to be getting 3 hits off of that, putting all 3 into Soul. Now let us draw a card after we do Shuffle. Is that correct? I feel like that's incorrect. Don't you only shuffle after the grade 2 gets written over? I might be completely insane here, but after all, I've never read a single Blangdmire card. So yeah, just gonna be drawing that card. And looks like we do see a Alchemist being called down here, so we're going to have a pretty strong attack here. We swinging in. Maybe not the greatest idea to be calling, an Alchemist right here and now, especially since they're going to be going into Full Blast next turn. And then, of course, that Full Blast is going to be meaning that Alchemist is going to get put to the bottom of the deck, which, maybe isn't the end of the world, considering how Blangdmire does have a lot of problems with deck out. But I guess, like, 1 extra card isn't really going to matter that much. We'll see if it ends up coming up. Anyways, using the Biscotti here, just drawing that extra card. One of the few cards that Youthberk is actually able to take advantage of. Just like, it was never able to use like Spiral Cutie Angel just because you need the soul for just like so many of your effects, and you need to keep at least that 3 soul in there in order to actually do a bunch of effects. So being able to play the Biscotti now is pretty solid. Looks like I think we counterblasted 1 and added the Biscotti back to our hand, which is interesting. I mean, I guess there isn't really anything else that you want to add back, so you might as well add a Biscotti back. It's always good in whatever situation. Using the Youthberk skill here discarding, was that the Biscotti again? I kind of missed it, but I think we might have. Calling out that Sequana, so pretty much we've got all of our pieces here. The only thing that we kind of would want here is maybe a second Fregosa. We've got the whole thing set up. We just need the full blast, which I assume we have at this point. So committing a cat from hand, gonna be using that skill. Youthberk used to always be that one deck that was able to play like multiple cats just because of how aggressively they can Soul Blast and filter through the deck. That, you know, just playing multiple cats was always pretty good. To be checking the top 5 here and then calling something off of it. Looks like it is going to be that second Fregosa, so just like I was saying, we've got everything that we do necessarily need in order to, you know, just smack very, very hard here, as we're just going to Soul Blast out grade 2 Youthberk, and then search the deck for, it doesn't really matter because we have all 3 already, so we're just deck thinning at this point. Honestly, not sure why we actually did Soul Blast out the grade 2. That is probably a bit of misplay. If you're putting a Tempest in here, you probably should have Soul Blasted the Tempest out for the cost, and then that way you could actually use Fregosa's skill here to Soul Blast 1 and draw a card, because it looks like, do we have anything that is not a Revolve form in the Soul? It doesn't really look like it, so that means we're not going to be able to use Fregosa's skill to Soul Blast 1 and draw a card. Okay, so looks like we're going straight to battle. Just going to be swinging in with that Youthberk for a very clean 23. From my experience with Youthberk, this is always the attack that you take. It is probably the least threatening. We see a heal trigger coming on down here. Going to be giving the extra power to that Fregosa with the booster. Kind of interesting. I probably would have put it on the other one because, you know, make your attacks as threatening as possible. Your opponent's probably going to be eating a whole bunch of damage here. Oh, we see a Youthberk full blast coming off the drive check, so we guarantee, you know, just hitting there. But thanks to that heal trigger that we did on the drive checks, our opponent is actually going to be able to, you know, heal down to 1. They're going to hit a heal trigger on that drive check, doing correct operations here, putting the Sequana into the Soul, and then setting its drive to 2, then counterblasting 1 to give it an additional drive, adding that crit, and bot decking the Alchemist, as well as giving the extra 15k to the entire front row, given that, you know, we've got all 3 in the Soul. So putting that Alchemist onto the bottom of the deck. So it looks like we're going to be swinging in with that Youthberk for 28, a pretty impressive number. Now this is going up against a 20k Vanguard, so it's not as threatening, but looks like we're going to just commit a PG there. I think we probably could have gone, if we had a 20k shield, that would have been really sick, because that would have been a 2 to path. But it looks like things are getting even scary as we see a front trigger being flipped there, making those Fragosas even more powerful than they already were. I mean, they're already hitting for 20, now they're like 30. They were hitting for 30, now they're like 40 with the front trigger, swinging that extra really big attack. We could have had a 50k swing and then a 48, which might have been the better play, because 48 is already a good number. But I think if we're Blangdmire here, you kind of just eat both these attacks. We see nothing coming off of the drive check there, and guarding this last attack with an over trigger, which is definitely kind of interesting. I feel like you kind of just eat that attack, like you just wasted a whole bunch of shield value there. So finally gonna be riding up to Blag. Honestly, this matchup is a little bit interesting in this case, because if you've seen my How to Beat Youthberk, you know that Youthberk actually does not like having its rear guards taken away from it. We see Blangdmire putting 2 cards into the Soul with the skill, and this time you do shuffle. Since you put, I think it's like 1 or more, you do get a draw card. But as I was saying, Youthberk is a deck that doesn't really like to have its rear guards retired or removed from the board. Obviously, that binding face down is going to be a serious hamper on Youthberk's ability to actually just multi-attack. Those Fragosas serve as probably the best attackers, and once you run out of those good attackers, your extra 15 does a lot less each turn. So we're going to see a Zamug being played here, putting 2 cards on top into the Soul, putting back that perfect guard. So we have a 15k attack here, which is not really going to be that threatening. In some instances, you might even say just swing it in at the Fregosa. That way you can just bind the whole rest of their board. But losing that Alchemist was pretty unfortunate because that does limit us to 3 attacks here unless we're able to actually get, you know, that new Alchemist drawn. So looks like instead of an Alchemist, we're going to be calling a Butcher to, you know, the Alchemist spot, which is very interesting. Like, you've sealed intercepts here, but I think you should always put that behind the Zamoog, right? Because, you know, you have a lot more threatening power. You can swing for 23-2 damage. That at least gets a 15k shield. Looks like we are swinging in at the Fergosa, like I said. And also, I don't know why we're committing a booster to Blangdmire. Like, Blag is already a threatening enough attack already. Just because he already gets like 10k. Like, 21 isn't like the greatest number for a Vanguard to be at. But, you know, it's nothing to sneeze at. Like, it's better than swinging 13, which a lot of just vanilla Vanguards would be swinging at. Anyways, we see a heal trigger being hit there yet again. And then we see a defensive critical trigger, but of course it's not really going to matter because that was a 2-attack Blangdmire turn. So, very pitiful from the Blangdmire's side. So looks like we whiffed on the Persona ride. To make things a little unfortunate, I mean, Full Blast is Full Blast. It's always going to be a pretty powerful, you know, swing, very powerful turn. We do see a third Fergosa here, so we do manage to get one of the really good attackers here as we finally use the Fergosa correctly, Soul Blasting out the Tempest, but we put the Gust in there, which we already had 2 Tempests, so it doesn't actually matter. And I believe, do we still have 1 extra soul that we could use? Well, we didn't Persona Ride, so I don't know what we could Soul Blast here to draw a card. I think it's just all Revolt forms. Oh yeah, we have the Sequana. I forgot that goes to Soul. But we can definitely Soul Blast that Sequana, draw another card. Looks like we drew into a critical trigger there, which is a little unfortunate. We do have the second Sequana here, so that's going to make, you know, this second Vanguard swing that much more threatening. You know, Quad Drive does get you to a lot of places. Using the Youthberk skill here, probably looking to fill out that empty column there from the top 3. Honestly, like, you just call anything, but it looks like instead we're going to be adding a Full Blast here. Not sure. I think we drove check one last turn, so shouldn't be that big of a problem. We don't really miss it, and it looks like we're going straight to battle phase without calling anything to that other column. So pretty unfortunate, kind of a little bit of a misplay. Like, I'm not sure what you have in hand, but I think almost anything serves as a really good attacker here. Like, anything with extra 25k, as long as, like, even an 8k hits over defensive. But it looks like we're going to try to opt to block this Youthberk attack, even though we are at 1. And as you saw there, we just hit Overture, so technically we could bypass this with that power. But in all honesty, doing that just like commits 1 damage unless you get that critical trigger. But what we're going to do here, I think, is the correct play, assigning all the effects to that Fergosa. So we kind of do have either get 2 PGs out of our opponent, or we have the ability to, you know, just deal 2 free damage. And if we can manage to get a critical trigger on like either of these next 2 drive checks, then you do have like potentially 4 damage or 2 PGs coming out of your opponent there. But looks like we are going to probably go into the Full Blast here. Yep, going to go ahead and do that, giving the extra 5k that Fergosa, using the Sequana skill to put its soul, setting the drive to 1. And then of course we still do have that 1 counter blast, which is kind of interesting. Both of these players have been staying at relatively low damage, which in certain sense does make a lot of sense. These are both very aggressive decks that can kill in a single turn, that can like 3 to 6 you or 2 to 6 you sometimes. So definitely there is a bit of caution to be had. But at the same time, I think that the biggest thing is the fact that, you know, neither of them has bothered to commit to a whole bunch of attacks. And also, we're forgetting to bot deck something off of the Full Blast. We see another PG being committed to this Full Blast, so that's 2 already out of your opponent. So you've got to be feeling at least a little bit good if you are the Youthberk player, as we see a front turn and another heal trigger here. God, this game is never going to end, is it? So pretty impressive trigger power there, but unfortunately, because we did have over trigger during that last drive check, all of that power doesn't really matter. Like, Oh no, it's 100 million 50. It's gonna be super hard to guard. Not to mention the fact that we saw a heal trigger coming off that first attack. Once again, healing down to 1 has allowed your opponent to heal back down to 2 effectively, and then the second was another defensive, which doesn't really matter at all. Blangdmire finally managing to Persona Ride here, so we're looking to have a decently strong turn here. Unfortunately, we are still missing that Alchemist because we committed it a bit too early. We're not going to be able to have access to it during this very pivotal moment, but at least we still do have Zamoog here swinging for the 25 under Persona Ride. Would have been better if it had a 8k booster, but in all honesty, that Zamoog really shouldn't even be there. It should be on the bottom of the deck, but I don't know what else is there to say other than, you know, sometimes you forget, and hopefully that doesn't cost you the match. So using the Blangdmire skill here, going to be binding those 4 cards. We now have 8, and we're already hitting for very strong numbers there. An extra 20k is going to make this 21, 31, 51 in at the Vanguard. But of course, you still do have the same problem that Blangdmire has, is that except when you use that divine skill, you're not really putting any pressure. Like, you got this massive Vanguard swing, but it's still always just 1 damage. And depending on how the game goes, 1 damage is 1 damage. Okay, so it looks like we're gonna opt to not guard that. I believe we did actually proc divine skill there, which is yet another very kind of poor. Oh, so it looks like we didn't actually. Oh, we did. Okay, so I'm crazy. No, I was right though. But we used divine skill there, which was. I'm just gonna say that's not a good use. So your divine skill has to be a kill. Like, yeah, you're pushing damage. You finally put your opponent to 3, but now you've basically just kind of run out of gas here. Your opponent does have no skill here, so they can't even revolt dress. But you know, with the cards in hand and only being at 3, divine skill gone, is it really that big of a deal? Like, you could even just swing Zamoog here, and you've seen basically nothing from Blangdmire at this point. Are they going to be able to actually hit you with the strong attack? Oh, so it looks like we're going to be countering that Blangdmire divine skill by rewriting into that Razael that we did actually see drive checked a couple turns ago. Definitely not a terrible tech. I think I mentioned this in my How to Beat Mini. Razael is technically techable in almost any Keter deck, except for Azel, because Azel is very xenophobic, and he doesn't allow angels like Razael into his clan. But anyways, aside from that, we've got, you know, a Razael being called as a rear guard here, which is, I don't think, a correct play. Like, if you're committing to the Razael, keep the extra Persona Ride. Like, you're not gonna close things out this turn unless you hit, like, triple crit. But, you know, I guess if you're desperate for rear guards, I don't know why you are, because I guess like a lot of your stuff has been bound a lot, but at the same time, like you can't be this desperate, right? We're gonna be using the Razael. I think we put, was that 3 critical triggers back in? Like, I don't think you're in very much danger here. Like, yeah, you've got that 6 damage heal now, but did you really need that? You've kind of just converted your deck into a vanilla deck at this point. You basically just got 4 attacks and a bunch of vanilla cards. That's Quana, not even at a 10k booster, it's just at 8k. That Youthberk there, basically a vanilla. This Razael, basically a vanilla. As you're swinging 21 in at the Vanguard, you're just gonna be taking that, the 3rd PG going into the damage zone there, swinging the Razael for a whopping 13. Which gets 2 to pass by a single trigger. But we do get to use the Razael skill, I guess. We can call a grade 2 and a grade 1, create a column, you know, keep those cards specifically for being bound by, what's his name, Blangdmire? Is that important? Is that good? Who knows? And it looks like we're doing exactly what I said, that 15k 2 to pass here. Just having that really weak Vanguard is going to just kind of prevent us from doing anything. As we drive check 2 blanks and a critical trigger. So like maybe we can add, you probably put power to, yeah, the Biscotti here. 28k is a much better number than 23, at least calls for a 28k guard. And it is pushing 2 damage, so definitely the correct play there. Probably just swing, I mean, you can always just swing the 13 in at that Zamoog, and then swing the 28 to try and push the 2 damage. Sometimes I wonder. Okay, swing for the 13 in at, my guess would probably just be the Zamoog. Yeah, oh, okay, I just we're swinging Vanguard, and then we're going to intercept with Zamoog, which I think is a little bit of a misplay, because you kind of needed that, unless you happen to have a lot of other cards, which maybe you finally drew into them. But looks like the Biscotti is going to be end up getting blocked by that front trigger there, so 1 card guarding it. Starting off with another Persona Ride. So Blangdmire has successfully Persona Ride twice now, whereas Youthberk has completely whiffed on both of them. They could have had a Persona Ride on this next upcoming turn, but they decided to just, call it in as a rear guard. Finally getting the Alchemist back, drawn up from the bottom of the deck there. Going to be calling yet another Zamoog here. Checking that top 3 cards. Going to be putting 2 of those cards, putting the last remaining PG back in the deck, and that deck is definitely starting to look a little bit small at this point. Youthberk probably not feeling anywhere close to being deck out, besides all of the deck thinning that they did. You did just put 3 more cards back into the deck. Hopefully we can call, another unit there, so we can at least have 4 attacks without Alchemist. We have plenty of CB. Both players at 3 here. It looks like it's going to be a pretty big grind fest, because basically you've got 4 attacks from each of these opponents, and they no longer really have anything that is doing anything. Blangdmire uses Divine Skill, so you've just got nothing but a bunch of strong attackers here, I guess, which is definitely a lot more than I can say for Youthberk at this instance. That Vanguard is just always going to be swinging for really big numbers, and eventually it's going to get either PG'd, and Youth is going to run out of PGs, and you're going to hit a crit there. But it looks like the other inevitability, Blangdmire running out of soul, using the Evoke Alchemist there in order to restand the Zamoog. Binding the column that we did call back off of the Razael there for this really big swing. This is not a crit to win it situation. They need to hit 2 crits in order to actually kill you from this situation. But it is still a very massive swing. It's honestly, you're not in that much danger if you even just want to take this. Especially since next turn they probably won't be able to use the skill unless they can manage to get 4 cards into that soul. And it looks like we are hitting it with the Elementary, discarding that Full Blast, drive checking into absolutely nothing there. We've got 2 more attacks here, swinging in this Zamoog for an extra 15k, plus its 25k base. It's going to be hitting for a pretty impressive 40 here, but looks like we're just going to be hitting that with a perfect guard. And now that I'm realizing something, that Servant Phallicate never attacked, did it? Am I crazy? I'm sure editing me will have made a note of that, because I think I only saw 3 attacks there. But anyways, we call the Fergosa the last, the final, the only one left, Fergosa. But of course, she does absolutely nothing. I was gonna make that a little bit more vulgar, but I decided against it. So now we've got a 10k rear guard, a 13k rear guard, and a 13k Vanguard that allows you to call a 18k column. And it looks like we are getting a little bit desperate here, calling out that critical trigger just to swing at the Vanguard. Going to be getting hit with that intercept there. And now it is time for our all-powerful 13k Vanguard to swing in. And honestly, there really isn't a reason to guard this. What was that? Did we discard an Alchemist? Oh, wait, what? Why did we discard that Alchemist? Didn't we intercept? Maybe it was already in the drop zone. I'm just gonna pretend I didn't see that. As we're once again 15k, 2 to pass this, drive checking into absolutely nothing. So now we've got that super powerful 13k column, that is a 5k card, and that super powerful 18k column, which is a 10k card. Committing an Alchemist. Hopefully that was the same Alchemist that we saw earlier, guarding this Fergosa line with that 15k guard there. Now Blag going into its turn. I believe we only have 2 cards in Soul, which is enough to draw a card if you want. But it is not enough to actually get the power, because you do have to actually bind 4 cards there. Gonna be using the Quenlu here on the Vanguard, which is I don't know if you guys know this, that is an illegal play, because Quenlu can only target rear guards, which is obviously why that's a very interesting, questionable play. That is also illegal. Putting our hand on the damage zone, that actually could have been very disastrous, as we already saw, like some mishaps happen already in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if we left that hand there and accidentally took an extra damage for free. Swinging in this Zamug, unboosted, which is interesting, I suppose. I think you should always boost here, because that 28k would have called for a lot more shield, and it's going to be restanding with the Alchemist anyway, and it's getting an extra 15k, so it's already hitting for a decently big number, 30k with an extra crit. Swinging in with the Alchemist, of course, just going to be restanding it. Unfortunately, because we don't have enough to bind the 4, we only have 3 cards in Soul, we're not going to be getting that massive power here. Just be restanding these Zamu, giving that extra 15k, so that rear guard is actually going to be threatening. But this Vanguard is honestly not that powerful. Like, just take this. You need the extra counterblast anyway. Please, just take this attack. He needs 2 crits to kill you. Okay, so it looks like we're finally going to be taking it. We're finally going to see the players go past 3, although not Blangdmire, because they're going to hit a heal there and heal down back to 2 with only 3 cards left in deck. And, oh, my mistake. I thought we were going to get past 3 damage, but nope. Yet another heal trigger keeps Youth at 3. Oh my god, why am I recording this? Anyways, swinging in the, what's it called? The Gear Colossus in at the Fergosa, because we do not want to give it an extra 10k, because if we give it an extra 10k, it's going to go to the Soul at the end of the battle. And if it goes into the Soul at the end of the battle, that means we have to draw a card, and we literally can do nothing during our next turn. Although it doesn't actually matter at all, because we're at 3 cards. That's not even enough to drive check with our Vanguard next turn. You might as well draw the card, and it doesn't actually matter at all, because neither of these players is going to be going past 3 damage, are they? Okay, calling the super powerful 8k vanilla Sequana, calling the super powerful 8k vanilla Carino. Gonna be swinging for the super powerful 16k column here. We can take 1 damage and then not swing with our Vanguard, I suppose. But looks like we're just gonna take it, because hopefully the players, just like I have already given up at this point. And it looks like I was miscounting. That was actually 4 cards in deck, I think. So realistically, if we had, you know, guarded all this, but I don't know how we're guarding all this with only 2 cards in hand. I guess as they're both 10, 15k shields, maybe we can do something. Drive checking, nothing. We can go back to Youthberk and a critical trigger, assigning all the effects to that Youthberk. So now it goes from a very powerful 21k vanilla swing to a very powerful 31k swing. Although, you know, this other attack is 18. Are we finally going to see a player go past 3 damage here? Technically, they only need to guard this one. Oh, for the first time this game, a player is at 4 damage. And we're going to use a PG on that last one so that we can stand and draw and swing with our rear guards. But that is pretty much the end of the game. That is the end of Blangdmire week, and that is the end of my sanity. I'm just going to let this game continue on for just a little bit longer as they draw into 2 cards with that card, finally ending the game and my suffering.